Good morning. My name is Crystal Smith. For as long as I can remember, my world has been surrounded by abuse of some form and fashion. From birth until 6 or 7, I witnessed domestic violence between my mother and my father. My father was abusive to my mother. He was an alcoholic and he beat her often. I was the oldest child and often the person who called the police. I was about 4 the first time I called the police for help. I was my mother's protector. My father would usually listen to me as I shouted at him. I took knives out of his hands, sometimes by the blades. But in the end, my father was successful. One night when I was at a meeting with my Brownie troop, my father taped 2 butter knives together and stabbed my mother in front of my little brother and 2 little sisters. He missed her heart by 2 inches. For years, I felt intense guilt because I was not there to stop him. At that point, my mother no longer had a choice. She had to leave or lose her children. She left my father. Unfortunately, I was also endured sexual abuse, first at 5 and 6 years old by a cousin, again at 10 by a stepfather, again at 11 by 18-year-old godbrother my mother took in our home. My mother abused drugs. My stepfather abused her mentally, emotionally, and financially. But I only saw him slap her once. In spite of what my father did to my mother, I never stopped loving him. My mother and stepfather called me a daddy's girl as they beat me for maintaining that relationship. I grew up differently than a lot of girls. I got pregnant and had a baby at age 12. At school and in my neighborhood, people talked about me, laughed at me, and judged me. It was very lonely. It was not unusual for me to get in physical fights with my boyfriends. I got my first black eye at 16. Sad to say, it was not my last. I desperately wanted to be loved. That is the reason a lot of us women endure domestic violence. When my husband came in my life 10 years ago, I was searching and praying for love, for someone who would make me feel needed and loved. Within the first month, I was being hit. The YWCA has taught me about red flags in relationships. They were all there before the abuse started. I just did not know to watch for them. So many black eyes, I was brainwashed to believe that I was nobody, and I was isolated from my family and friends. My daughter tried to protect me as I had been for my mother, but my husband forced her out of our home. I lived like a caged animal. I could not have friends or go anywhere. One night he beat me so bad, my father was called by the police to come to the hospital. It broke his heart to witness what he once was. When my oldest son was 5 days old, my husband beat me and took my breastfed baby away from me for almost a day, leaving me confined in a basement room so his family could not see my beaten face. I left for good almost a year ago. That is when I finally found the YWCA. You must be wondering, why did she keep going back? Why didn't she just leave? I did not leave because the love I felt for myself and the things that my husband put in my head. I have been to other shelters, but they did not have a big impact on me. The shelters I went to did not offer support groups, programs to help me learn about domestic violence, or case managers to help me work on plans for myself and my family. The YWCA is the best thing that has ever happened to me besides having my children. The staff was there for me, and they really cared. We started to feel like a family. The shelter offered many groups to help me learn about parenting and domestic violence. Lord knows my children are dealing with issues, problems, and even mental illness. At other shelters, I would have been dismissed or CPS called, but the YWCA knows that domestic violence affects children. They have programs and people to help me and my children. At the YWCA Weaver Domestic Violence Center, I even found me, recovered Crystal, buried down inside all the pain and hurt. I started remembering my dreams. dreams I could not have or reach with my husband. I have started doing what I love to do and helping others. The YWCA helped me realize that I am somebody again. My eyes open, and I am learning more and more each day how to deal with the pain. We are able to stay at the YWCA shelter for 3 months, and I worked hard and learned about living on my own. I applied for and I was admitted to the YWCA Transitional Housing Program. Thank you. And the transition housing program pays my rent for a year, and not only that, the best part is you continue to be a part of the YWCA while you're in transition housing. So for a year, I still have the support I had in shelter. It makes me feel safe and not so alone. I had some great moments in shelter. I got back into church and got saved. I started writing poetry and trying to encourage other residents. I cried at the candlelight vigil we had during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I felt joy and happiness that I was one who got out, for I am a survivor of domestic violence. Today I'm working and saving money. My children are in counseling, and I am looking for a way to go back to school. Someday I am going to be a nurse. For me and many others, abuse is a chain link. My grandmother, my mother, my sisters have all been in abusive relationships. My brother is changed by the domestic violence he witnessed. When I finish this program, I will be back with all of you and to help others. I have to stop the chain, for I'm not going to raise my sons to be abusers and my daughters to accept.